Michael.
Welcome to the Regeneration Podcast. Or welcome back, as the case may be. I am your co-host, Michael Martin, with my brother in arms, Mike Sauter. How's it going, Mike?
Good. I don't think I've ever done this, Michael, but I want to send a shout out. My oldest daughter, Mary's father-in-law just had some surgery. It's pretty serious, but he's also South Carolina. Mary and Doug are down there visiting Edwin Crowder right now, and he had some surgery. But what's funny is that he's a fan of the podcast, and I mean this. Like, Edwin's a very brilliant, very, very, very brilliant guy. So we have some. It's an honor because we have some pretty good listeners, and he gets something from it, and I'm pretty absolutely.
Let's pray for him. Let's ask all our listeners to pray for him as well.
Amen. Yep. The surgery went well, and he's recovering. So that's How are you doing, Michael?
It's when we talked before, the whole energy changes on a farm at this time of year.
Yeah.
And so now my activities, we still have, even though we had really hard frost this week, we still have a lot of vegetables out in the garden. But I'm also getting ready for deer hunting, which is a big deal.
That season, yeah.
Plus, we do it. It's a survival thing for us. And I've been making tinctures. Tinctures.
Okay. Huh.
So what did I do so far? I did a turkey tail mushroom one I'm working on right now.
Huh.
I did propolis, which propolis is that stuff from the beehive, right? The glue.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Which is actually, propolis is really good for dental health, and it's antibiotic, and it's super good.
So you're just kind of putting it into a tincture and kind of rubbing it on your gums.
Yeah. I've moved into alchemist hunting mode. Yeah.
Huh. Who was our guest who made tinctures? She was really great. And are you following her method?
Mary Walters.
Yeah, she was awesome.
Yeah. I haven't heard from her in a while. I see pictures from her on Facebook where she shares a lot of things going on with her children. She's got, like me, she's got 9 kids.
Yeah, right. I loved how they would take family vacations and literally just get in the van and follow the Holy Spirit and have no idea where they were driving. And the kids would all of a sudden find out they were driving north and get all bitter.
She's incredibly, as you know.
Yeah. A true hippie.
She has the most developed intuition of anybody I think I've ever met.
Yeah, I got that impression.
But so the other thing, though, is this week, finally, it was a hard. I was enjoyable, but it was painstakingly slow project of writing this introduction to Novalis's Christianity or Christendom or Europe.
And that's going to connect to our guest. Yeah. I just reread it. I just reread it. I just reread it this morning from this. Okay. Yeah. So mine is this one here.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Which is useful.
I want to get that because it's got it all in one volume.
Like a lot of things
into English.
Yeah.
And actually, this edition, I think it's going to have spiritual songs as well as some, not all probably, of the religious fragments from Novalis's vast.
Is it a new translation or just some editors from Angelico?
It's a reprint. It's actually a reprint of the one I did in the Heaven.
Oh, okay.
So when I asked the publishers, which one are you using?
The big translator of Novalis, of course, is George MacDonald, the himself a romantic, and
right.
It's his versions of Hymns to the Night that are in my body. Those are the ones I've read countless times. His translations,
and it is his version of the spiritual songs that will be.
The hymns and the Nacht and the spiritual songs.
Okay.
You came prepared.
Yeah.
So this was my segue into our guest today, Father Anthony Chadwick, who is a priest of the Anglican Catholic Church. Did I get that right?
That's right. Yes.
My wife is a huge fan of the Anglican Catholic Church, and there are a couple in our state, but they're kind of far away. Otherwise, we'd probably visit. And I do know a friend of mine attends services, and he's a member of a parish of the Anglican Catholic Church. I think maybe near Grand Rapids. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's someplace in the state of Michigan.
I'm gonna Google him for around my area and see
Nice.
if I know anybody. Yeah.
And I got to know Father Anthony. I don't even know how. I think
Oh.
you must have bumped into my blog or something.
Yes, I think I did, and then I started. I bought these two books of yours.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I found them very
Okay.
interesting. Mm.
And so because Father Anthony and I think are brothers from the same mother, or brothers from another mother.
I can
Because
see the connections. Yeah.
well, no, seriously.
Okay.
Father Anthony, and I'll let him tell most of the story, had kind of a circuitous route to becoming a priest of the Anglican Catholic Church. And but what what I loved about when I encountered Father Anthony's blog, it's what's the name of it again?
Romanity.
Um,
The Blue Flower.
there's just a minute. The YouTube channel is Romantia Christiana, and the blog is The Blue Flower.
The Blue Flower.
Yeah.
Catholics himself, right?
Mm.
As a lot of you might know, listeners, I've been writing a lot over the last couple of years about this idea of Christian Romanticism, which I see as intimately sociological. And there's Father Anthony's book, so that's why we had to have him on the show. So first of all, Father Anthony, if you could just describe your kind of itinerarium from, I think, a boyhood in the Anglican Church to where you are now, that would be wonderful.
Oh, well, it's. I think I've got a way of winnowing it down a little bit. I was more attracted by beauty in church services and churches than people quoting the Bible and coming out with ideas and teachings. I was more interested in beauty, and this led me to High Church Anglicanism in London. And from then, I was doing a harpsichord making course in London, and I was attracted to traditional Roman Catholicism because it seemed to be a kind of upgrade, as it were, of High Church Anglicanism. But unfortunately, for the most part, it's motivated by extreme right-wing nationalist politics rather than by beauty, truth, and goodness. I went to study theology in Fribourg. I'm sort of fast forwarding a bit to try to keep this succinct. And I felt very sort of down with Roman Catholicism and the idea of becoming a priest. And I was very conflicted between the integralism of the traditionalist and the beauty I sought.
What year was this, Father?
I'm talking about 1998, 1999.
Long time ago.
No, wait a minute, 1989, around about 1989.
Okay.
So getting on towards 1990.
Mm-hmm.
I then, on finishing at Fribourg, I joined the seminary of Griciliano in Italy, the Institute of Christ the King, which is quite known for its rather sort of pompous Italian flamboyant style. Mm-hmm. But it seemed to be less political, although it has remained very tradition, family, and property, and that very totalitarian view of Catholic life.
We had a guest on, Dominic D'Souza, whose dad is a big muckety-muck in that movement, and Dominic himself does not associate, but has had a really good feel for it. Continue, yeah.
But so I was at Freeport University, and I was recommended to read because I started to become interested in orthodoxy, but without sort of going very, very far into it. But one author I discovered, of course, was Nicholas Berdyaev, and he his the three books I found secondhand in London were that's falling to pieces. The Meaning of History.
I was going to say that's the best. Meaning of the Creative Act and Solitude and Society is my third favorite, but Meaning of History is key. Yeah.
And Spirit and Reality.
That's great.
This is very much to do with. Sorry, I'm holding in the wrong place. Very much to do with his metaphysics and epistemology, and this was my particular favorite, was Freedom and the Spirit.
Yeah, I have that too.
These three books, of course, then this other one, which is more of his view of history and the end of our time, which suggests that we would be coming back to a new Middle Age after modernity. Well, of course, he lived in the thick of the Russian Revolution, and he came to France, and died in France I think in the 1950s or something like that.
1948.
But
his marriage was pretty cool too, right? His wife and his wife's twin sister, right? And then they had a cat named Murray, and he wore a lot of perfume. But the house, a lot of perfume. But the household there in Paris, I can almost smell it when you read some of his descriptions and so forth. Two women, a cat they all adored, and Berdyaev himself, who just doused himself in perfume.
Good heavens! Heavens! Well, of course, I couldn't possibly know, because it was he lived such a long time ago. But one thing that he led me on to this fellow, Jacob Boehme.
Of course.
Genius of the Transcendent. These are writings of Jacob Boehme, the shoemaker in Germany. And this is a capital figure, a kind of reaction against, shall we say, dogmatic Christianity. Not to say that I deny the dogmas of the creed and so on, but this kind of Christianity that's based on teaching and the word and this kind of thing, rather than the search for beauty. But Jacob Boehme, he's very difficult to read, very difficult and to understand. Especially the notion of the Ungrund, that I sort of I've had sort of inklings about what the Ungrund, well, I think one of the the greatest symbols of the Ungrund on this earth is the sea, and I've always been fascinated by the sea,
especially a stormy sea, don't you think?
Well, stormy seas, but well, I don't sail on sort of stormy seas. I only sail on seas.
That's right, you're a sailor.
But stormy seas, it's really fascinating. I've just put up a post on Facebook with some pictures of this recent storm we had this last week, Kiaran, and I superimposed it with the storm passage from Richard Strauss's Alpine Symphony, which is guaranteed to pull the tears out of my eyes. It's absolutely terrifying. There's a terrifying there's a sense, and I've always had this sense with with stormy seas. I mentioned that in my romantic Christianity, that when I was 12 years old, my family, we went to Portugal, and there was a nasty storm. It was in August, and I was standing on the pier facing the sea, and a bit too near the water for my mother. She got very worried about it and came to get me away from any possible danger. Although really I wasn't actually in a situation where I feared for my life, but I was just absolutely taken by this anger, this fury that we find in some of the romantics. We find this in some of the English romantics, like Shelley and Lord Byron.
Right. So about how old were you when that
Yes.
at that time, Father?
I'm sorry?
How old were you when that happened?
Well, this is when I was at university. We're talking about I think I was something like 30, 31.
No, that's when you went to Portugal with your family?
When I went to Portugal with my
Yeah.
family, I was 12.
Well, because you're reminding me, I haven't thought about this for years. And I don't remember it, but my mother told me about it when I was probably 3 years old. My family and my grandparents went to boat races they would have on the Detroit River. And we were all standing by the edge of the dock watching the boats. And there was a little splash. Nobody paid attention to it, but my grandfather looked down, and I had fallen into the water, and it was 20 feet deep or more. And as I bobbed up, he grabbed me by the hair and pulled me out.
Well, oh wow!
Which I don't recall, but
Well,
I remember as a child being a little terrified of rocky boats, and I think that might have something to do with it.
well, especially if you haven't yet learned to swim.
How about that famous prayer of the Breton fisherman? You know, the sea is so wide and my boat is so small. It's just that one line prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
You know, I think that's the essence of it. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly that's another very important thing in my life was
Brittany, right?
Brittany, and also when I was around about sort of 10, 11, 12, I was fascinated by Jules Verne and the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the Nautilus, Captain Nemo, and the one thing I didn't fully understand at the time was Captain Nemo's fury at the at wars in the world involving navies. And he thought his mission is to go and destroy warships.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and yes, he'd had a special kind of submarine that could ram ships without destroying itself. But I sort of realized sort of later on that well, it's not something that we can do, but one can understand the emotion.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of this in this world today. There's a lot of this unchanneled anger and fury. So this is one thing, you know, we do have to be aware of. So anyway, I'll come back to my own my own discovery of another way of seeing Christianity through Berdyaev and through Burma, and that led me to much later on. I would say only about 3 or 4 years ago that I discovered Novalis. And I sort of, at an emotional level, I almost fell in love with him. And I thought, how can you fall in love with somebody who's been dead for since 1801? But I sort of felt a kind of kind of union with him, a kind of yes, without sort of without sort of being able to rationalize it very much. Whilst I was at Fribourg University, we did a seminar in church history on liberalism, as in Lamennais and Chateaubriand and
Lamennais is he's been a 30-year fixation for me. When you were mentioning like Brittany and the Stormy Seas, Father Anthony.
Malo, yeah.
Yeah, so Lamennais, he was, and what he did, an early childhood experience for him, which was a stormy sea, was he was looking at the coast, in Normandy, and he just knew he saw more than other people saw, and he didn't know what to do with that. He was amidst a group of people, and he just saw more. And,
well, he knew he was born in Saint Malo.
Yeah, right.
I've been to Saint Malo many times to sail out the Rance and round the Isle of Cézanne, and there's a channel to the northwest if you want to avoid the rocks. It's very, very rocky. It can be very dangerous if you're not careful, if you don't have a good chart, and it is there are boys, there are channel boys that port and starboard channel boys, so you can if you're observant, if you're careful, you can do that without any danger. And then of course you can go west past the coast of Dinard, and then off towards the Bay of Saint-Brieuc, which is absolutely magnificent, round the corner of the Cap Friole, which can be quite frightening. You can get quite a lot of chop there with the currents going past. But the site is absolutely magnificent, with the castle on the cliff edge, and then the two lighthouses up on the top of the cliff. And if you look on my YouTube channel, you'll find some videos of me doing that. I've been twice past the Cap Friole. The first time I wasn't successful in reaching the island of Bréa, because I was very, very concerned about the weather. But the second time I was with a friend. We were in two boats, and we made it all the way there to the Isle of Bréa. And then we sailed back. The conditions were quite good. Sometimes the chop was a little bit tricky, but apart from that, it was. Yes, the sailing. That's very much part of my childhood desire, and I actually started to learn to sail when I was 50. And so I sort of made something up. But anyway, I'll come back to my university days with liberalism and Lamennais, and I prepared a talk on Lamennais. Of course, it was a very long time ago. He was a very odd fellow, very odd, partly romantic and partly revolutionary rationalist. Very much a man of the 18th century. But the book I most referred to was this, the Bernard Reardon, Religion in the Age of Romanticism. This is particularly good. You've got Lamennais and Paroles d'un Croyant, and Gioberti Rosbini in Italy, German Catholic theology in the Romantic era, and of course you get to the idealists and to Novalis. But I think that's a particularly valuable introduction.
I was unaware of the book, so I'm sending it to myself.
I'm sure of it. It's published by Cambridge, and it's a standard work. So that's the work I used to prepare my the seminar work. And I've often been back to it since, because there's quite a lot on. There's quite a bit of difference between French Romanticism and German Romanticism, French being
Yes, it's hard even between, like, say, Lamennais and Novalis. It's hard to draw a line, and and they put Lamennais in conversation with, like, I don't know how you pronounce it, Shadiev, in Russia at that time. But having been a big fan of Lamennais, or like just read everything I could, it's hard, Michael. You'll have to read this guy, go deep into Lamennais sometime. You're one of the few you could probably make connections I couldn't make, but he's so seminal.
And Lamennais had a lot in common, of course, with Chateaubriand.
Yeah.
Génie du Christianisme, which is very much the French asceticism. And that sort of joins up with the one thing I've been very struck by is the parallel between French liberalism and the Oxford movement in England. It was almost exactly contemporary, but I haven't found any evidence that they corresponded with each other. Somebody like Lamennais or Don Garanger or Chateaubriand. These were the people responsible for reviving Catholicism in France, without which, the revolution had devastated everything. Everything was utterly devastated by the French Revolution.
I'm in the middle of a book now by a really great American Catholic historian, John T. McGreevy, just called Catholicism, and it's taking the Catholic Church from the French Revolution to the modern times. And to your point, I mean, some of these guys like Montalembert, and they fled. They had to flee France for a time. But you're right. They had more connection with, like, Irish, people fighting for the dignity of the working class than they did with the thinkers in the Oxford movement, right?
And this is what you'll find in the Oxford movement. You'll find the slum priests of the 1850s and 60s.
Right.
So everything converged, but without it being an institution or an organization. There was a convergence of thought, and this is one thing that I'm been discovering with for example, the Inklings, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and Owen Barfield. Fascinating people.
Have you read the book, Michael? You've had it, the one on the Inklings called Romantic Religion. That's an excellent book. Who's the author of that one again? I forget it. Google it.
Oh, Romantic Religion.
I wasn't prepared for the test.
Just one moment. I won't spend long on. Oh yes, here we are. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the difference between Father Anthony and myself. It'll take me 20 minutes to find a book in my library.
At least I know mine are.
The last name's that's really great. It's a great book.
This one's marvelous. Yes.
And you can tell he's most fascinated with Owen Barfield of all of them by far.
Oh yes, absolutely. And Owen Barfield's a love of Rudolf Steiner.
Seminal for us, Anthony. Pretty seminal, that connection for this podcast. Yep.
And I think that's not a rabbit hole that I've particularly been down. I think it does need to be explored. Because I've been. This is an interesting one. I haven't read it entirely.
Oh yeah, Mark.
We had him on. He's great, and it's a great book. Yep.
Yeah.
So he's been on the podcast. Yeah.
That's Mark Vernon. Interesting fellow. I don't know. Well, I suppose he probably got fed up of the bureaucracy in the Church of England and so on.
Sounds like it. He's never said, I don't think. But
well, it's the impression I have, but I might be completely mistaken. I've never met him. But I've seen him talk. I've heard and seen him on YouTube videos, and he seems a very, very, very interesting fellow. That's Jason Baxter, The Medieval Mind of C.S. Lewis. I haven't read that yet.
I haven't had that.
Recently. But that's another job for this winter. Whilst the boat lies out there covered in a turbine.
How close are you to the sea?
Takes me about 2.5 hours to get to the Rance.
Okay.
So the Plouer-sur-Rance is where I if I'm sailing northern Brittany, then I launch in the Rance, and then I go out through the lock, and then I can either go east towards the bay of the Mont Saint-Michel, or you've got to be very careful. You've got to be very careful in that bay. Granville and the Isle of Chausey. That's a project I have for next year.
Nice.
So there's anyway. I don't want to. Yes, I don't want to. I don't want to digress too much. But I've still got. And then it takes me about 3.5 to 4 hours to get down to southern Brittany. To that's, let's say, with the boat on the back of the car.
And you're in Paris, right?
Sorry, no. I'm in.
Hmm.
I'm near a town called Mayenne. Let's see, for to the northwest from Le Mans, and shall we see, between if we look at Le Mans and the Mont Saint-Michel.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the map, and you look sort of midway between the two, you'll find Mayenne, and then I'm in a little village to the east of Mayenne. It's a little village called Champs-Généteux.
And you have a nice Anglican Catholic parish there.
Oh no, I don't have a parish.
Okay, I wondered. Okay,
I'm sort of without being officially a hermit, but that's sort of, I just sort of discovered that I am a hermit. Without wearing a monastic habit or anything like that. That's probably another thing in my another influence in my life is the rule of St. Benedict. The time I spent 6 months at the Abbey of Trior at the behest of my former superior. That's another story. I was sort of because I'd left his institute, the institute where I went to seminary in Italy, and I regretted it and went back. My superior said, "All right, well, you spend 6 months with the monks, so you could be a working guest, and then if that goes well, I'll take you back." Of course, he had no intention of doing so whatsoever. But anyway, that's neither here or there, because I'm very glad I didn't, because I would have gone through the same problems as before, basically of relating to perverse narcissistic personalities. Basically,
yeah, I know.
We've got
I know.
Downpour outside, so that's neither here nor there. Yes. Without digressing, I've got to stay on the subject. I went to spend 6 months at Trior, and I was quite surprised how similar modern monastic life is to the army. It's absolutely Orwellian. It's totalitarian.
Huh.
The monk is expected to surrender his personality, and he becomes a part of the collective. He's no longer an individual person. I find that very dangerous. And even
now, my experience at a Trappist monastery was somewhat different, insofar as if there is some homogenizing tendency, I could, having worked for 6 years at a Trappist monastery, same rule of St. Benedict, that in comparison with, say, like New York City or the college where I'd work, where people are trying to be individuals, the notion that like these guys wore the same clothes, they had the same regimented life, but it almost put like, if we use the theological kind of construct that, an individual is somebody who looks at the crowd and tries to do something different that may or may not be themselves. So personhood is what we're looking for,
Exactly. But this is a lot of Orthodox authors have
sure. Zazoulis and so forth.
Distinction between the person and the individual being a
and again, now these monks, they
were
people who took on personhood. They wanted to, And where at the college and, in cities, they're not even maybe exposed to that, or they can't be faulted for not knowing of that. But I thought the monks by and large did pretty well. They knew that we tend to avoid people, I think, who are kind of unlike us. Just our energy fields conflict. They have to learn, so they stay near because they can't leave. They stay near people who have different temperaments than them. So, and then they learn not to be codependent. They learn to be forthright in their speech. But I think, especially when I think of the college or say these cities where they talk about diversity, people self-select and they really only expose themselves to people who are temperamentally and politically just like them. The monks had very different politics, very different temperaments. So as a way of developing personhood, I see what you saw, but I also saw, I don't know, there's something pretty cool there too, that they were probably more towards personhood than your average, but again, they were professed monks. But I didn't see it's quite as squelching as you did.
Well, of course, it was a different community. Well, it's the impression I got. I mean, obviously, I think many of those monks who were in that community would have found their personality in different ways and their particular spirituality, and so without getting to know the persons, you can't really make a judgment. It was an impression I had. It was an impression I had. But nevertheless, as you said about the community you knew, I'm very fond of Saint Aelred of Revel.
Friendship and
on French, and this is absolutely vital. That friendship doesn't always mean homosexuality in a monastic community. There can be friendship without any kind of tendency for it to become corrupt. And I think that's this is. Now I'm bringing up the subject of monastic spirituality because I've come up a lot. I've met quite a lot of people interested in, for example, perennial traditionalism and esoteric Christianity, and I think those particular rabbit holes, like Rudolf Steiner, I think these are things that we can sort of nibble at very, very in great moderation. But I think that I think a very sound basis, a very sound basis of the kind of Christianity we're trying to live is something like what can be influenced by the rule of Saint Benedict and the monastic tradition. And then this can be combined with the way we can nibble at the sophiology tradition and the wisdom tradition and the esoteric Christianity. And I think you can go very, very far wrong if you go too far down that rabbit hole. At least it's the impression I have personally. I think others would have a different way of expressing that, and I think a great part of the monastic tradition is, of course, mysticism, and which involves the wisdom tradition and Christian esotericism. I think Christ himself, the messianic secret, the parables weren't to be taken so literally after all, but they have so many different layers of meaning. And this is one difference I have, for example, with fundamentalism, both Catholic and Protestant. I have a sister who's a Baptist, who married a Baptist, and I was. They came to visit me this summer, and I think they know their limits with me. They've mellowed a lot themselves. They matured an awful lot, They're a bit older than I am, but my sister's husband, Steve, yes, he had some sort of rather, I would say, rather shallow reflections for somebody who has studied Calvin and Reformed theology and so on. And I would think I'd say I would be sort of very diplomatic with them and not say too much. But I was the idea that would go through my mind is what a shallow reflection, and what a shallow. There's something very missing from that shall we say Reformed Protestant or Roman Catholic fundamentalism. So this is another thing that brought me to romantic Christianity. Another book that is of great interest is Nobility of Spirit by Rob Riemann.
Don't know that one.
Don't know it.
Don't you know that?
No.
You should get that. I think this is very important. This is he's Dutch, but he speaks very good English, and he talks an awful lot about this is really what's at the what is at the foundation of this book is the he wrote this at about the time of 9/11. No, actually a bit before, but I think he revised it a bit because he mentions the fanaticism of Islamic terrorists, and compares them with Nazi fanaticism as it occurred in the darkest years of World War II and the years leading up to it. And he writes an awful lot about Thomas Mann.
Yeah,
he's a very interesting character, Thomas Mann, the Magic Mountain, and the people up in recovering from TB up in a sanatorium, and they talk to each other. That's a rather fascinating book.
I was just reading it. That was my doorstop book last summer. No, the summer before last. Just these,
Yes.
This huge classic you just take up. Fascinating story.
And the ironic thing is just remind me of the name of the town. It's up on the mountain.
Oh, it's now it's Davos, isn't it? Like, because
Davos.
Yeah.
And
that's the irony. Yeah.
And that's the irony. Who goes there now is the real life James Bond villain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stavro Blofeld and Spectre.
One of the things Thomas Mann had in his writings, it's there in the Confessions of Felix Krull. It's there in it's certainly there in the Magic Mountain in a big debate. But I'm also looking for where we began. It's there in Novalis in Christendom or Europe, and it's the notion of how dangerous it is to this new thing. Man, for Thomas Mann, he always said, like, he had people who could see that we're small in the universe, or people who could see the other way, that we're big in the universe. And Novalis has it here too. He said the king in Christendom or Europe, he prevented bold thinkers from publicly asserting that the earth was an insignificant planet. For he well knew that if people lost respect for their own dwelling place and their earthly fatherland, they would also lose respect for their heavenly home and its kind, would give precedence to limited knowledge over eternal faith, and become accustomed to scorn everything great and deserving of wonder, regarding it as the lifeless effect of laws. And it's a very, very, very central theme for me. Yeah.
And that's almost as if he was facing the present woke ideology.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely incredible, and this is another thing that struck me about Romanticism. Romanticism is not something that is limited to the 1790s to the 1820s.
Oh.
But it was on and on. And
Felix Krull himself, he did it in one person because he was a genius and he was a confidence man. He came to a point in his life where he said, I could choose to see the world with people as being insignificant, or I could choose to see the world as like, we're big and we're significant. And he put it in terms of like where we are in the universe. And he said, he looked at both types and he said, that the person who sees us as very small in the universe, like specks of dust, like Stephen Hawking sees us. He said two things come from that. There's people who will be bullies and there's people who allow themselves to be shat upon and be treated like insects, right?
And put in concentration camps. And
so that's the same thing kind of happens in daycare. Like if there's too much non-maternal child care, and again, good people might have to ideally along, a daycare where the person, so forth. But like some kids enter in, and there's a Harvard psychologist, Jay Belsky, who saw this, a great psychologist, that it seems like if you just, in the worst case scenario, like 2 days after giving birth, a baby goes into a daycare or a young kid, impressionable, goes in for long-term daycare, 10 hours a day or something. Some kid is going to go in there and say, I'm not worth shit, so I'm going to allow myself to be picked on. And another kid is going to go in there angry as hell. So the bullying phenomenon, that's what Jay Belsky or Harold Belsky was studying, that it's mirror images of the same phenomenon. It allows people who think they're not worth anything, and they meet people who are angry as hell and treat other people like shit.
It's a phenomenon known in psychology as the empath and the narcissist.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've not only
this is so important as the mother, and again, Novalis is highlighting the emphasis on the divine feminine,
And I was very, very disillusioned in my marriage. I got married. I was 46 when I yes, and the woman in question turned out to the way her complete attitude in life, and I became aware very, very gradually that I was dealing with a narcissist. That's to say, that it wasn't a situation that could be repaired or reconciled with some kind of counselling or whatever, that it was an irreparable situation. And I had it very, very finely rationalized by the end of it, before I made the decision to get out. And I went to the law. I went to the legal authorities. We did it properly. Went through, and I'm still waiting for the final divorce hearing. And there'll be some money things to sort out. But anyway, I won't go into all that. But this is an experience I have had in my life. Is this figure of the empath, which is I have actually received a diagnosis of what used to be called Asperger's syndrome.
I saw that on your website.
Yes, that's right, and which they now call high functioning autism. What's in a name? What's in a word? But it's a different kind of experience of life. It's one experiences life differently. One has other sensitivities.
How would you describe what was that led you to inquire about that? What was your discovery process like, if that was somewhat recent, that you would want to ask yourself a question? Give me a sense for that, Father.
What really made me search for what was in myself was one was my experience with the Roman Catholic Church and with clerics and with people like Monsignor Vac at Griciliano and all that. I don't know if he would be classified as a narcissist or not. In the end of the day, I don't really care, because I no longer have anything to do with him. But the real thing was my marriage. And my first question is, well, what's wrong with me? What am I? In what way am I wrong before I can start accusing her of anything. And so and also it seemed, I thought of it that it might be a way to get her to give me a break, as you say over in the States. And yeah, give me a break. And she, for a time, she sort of medicalized the whole thing, and so saw herself as a kind of nurse or as a mother figure to look after me and to mother me and to nurse me and all that kind of thing, which was not really what I was looking for. I was just looking for a bit of empathy from her, but the problem is that she just didn't. She had no care. To come out of the personal situation, that was what encouraged me to start doing some serious research into my own life, because there were other things in my life, my relationship with my family, the Captain Nemo stuff, and the storm in Portugal, and I sort of connected it all together from the very beginning. My experience at school, I found it very difficult to get anywhere in school and to get good results for academic subjects and so on. And so in the end, I went for tests, and well, there was a psychiatrist, there was a psychologist, there was I think another couple of people involved in sort of interviewing me and asking me the right sort of questions. So that was the conclusion that they came to. I suppose it gave me some self-understanding. What's in a word? What's in a label? It's certainly not an identifying label for me. It's not my way of affirming my identity as the woke people like to do. Whether you're homosexual or a woman or a black person or whatever. But it gave me some understanding that that it's quite strange. I have a sort of feeling when I go into a public place and there are people sort of milling about, and if I'm not careful, I find myself feeling their feelings and feeling their intuition of following each other like sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to myself, what the hell am I doing? I don't even know these people. These people have their lives. I have my life. I'd have to rationalize it. But on an emotional level, I can find myself sort of following and trying to understand these other people for what they might be. And it's not always a very healthy thing. Whereas the narcissist has needs those other people to feed on.
Mm-hmm. Like a vampire.
So these are also very, very important things in my life that that have guided my my reading about someone like Novalis and his absolutely prophetic.
Tell us why you think he's prophetic. In what areas primarily?
Well, in this what you were talking about just a little bit earlier on, the people of Europe, the concept of Europe, but not only political, but the human, the bullied and the bullies.
It made me think too, reading Christendom in Europe again, and Michael, I wonder what you think, is that our friend Guido with his book on Germany. But so John Milbank, the theologian, really big into the European Union. Me a little less sanguine. But like Novalis is picturing there is at that time, Germany was the center of all the great culture.
Well,
Everything
yes,
as he
absolutely.
described, it was all humming. And right and wrong,
Yes.
there was a lot of reasons involved, but like the genius of Germany, what Germany was meant to bring to the world stage, and this brings in a little bit of Barfield and Rudolf Steiner, that the cultural
Yes.
impulse was moving from Britain, and it was right there in Germany. That after 2 world wars, just like going into Iraq twice, the genius was like the baby strangled in the cradle. And I wonder, since Germany never quite truly, Germany might be the center of Romanticism not come of age, right? Because it was supposed to come of age there. What do you think, Michael?
I'm going to pull up my intro because I talked about precisely that. So
yeah, okay,
here it comes.
Yeah. That again, the tragedy of World War I and World War II, amongst other things, is that all Novalis, Goethe, the whole different way of looking at science and everything, it's just gone. It's gone.
Proust and the whole the whole thing about reality and
the European Union can't work, in my understanding. Like Novalis had the vision, but it needed Germany, as if Germany was going to fulfill its personality. Right now, Germany is an emasculated sycophant of the United States, right?
Yeah, that's that's really what I gave a lot of thought to that for the conclusion of this intro to the book.
And put the context. This is our friend Guido Preparata. So the listeners, we'll have Guido again on soon, but you can go to your favorite bookseller. He's got a bunch of books out right now. One is his historical masterpiece, a abridged version of Conjuring Hitler. He's got one on the Algerian Wars, which is a book that really it's called Phantasmagoria, shows how kind of the British American team there learned how to pit Muslim factions against each other, kind of like creating proxy warriors. Then they kind of turn on us. He's got
yes.
But so Michael wrote the one. This is the introduction Michael wrote for Empire and Church, right, Michael?
Right. So here's what I wrote about precisely the European Union and Novalis.
Okay.
So after the European Union was formed, one of the important tasks set before its leaders was to create a symbolic representation that accurately depicted the aims of this new allegiance. On the surface, this may not appear as important as matters of policy, but as imaginative act, as magical idealism, it is all important. The seal, a blue field with a circle of 12 stars, is intended to represent unity, but in fact it is not far in the language of symbolism from the woman clothed with the sun and the woman with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head, from Revelation 12. Clearly, the ghost of Christendom haunts the EU, but the EU can hardly be called a Christian federation. Nevertheless, the Charlemagne Prize, awarded by the EU for distinguished service on behalf of European unification, is presented each year on the Feast of the Ascension. And this, despite the fact that among its many recipients have appeared not a few war criminals, but a man cannot serve 2 masters, right? So my position, and I love John Milbank, and I get where he's coming from.
That guy's so brilliant. Yeah.
Reality says something very different. And I think, to me, the EU is a diabolical parody of exactly what
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's rather like the Soviet Union was a diabolical parody of Russia.
Yes.
Yeah. What it
Russia was
been.
had a completely different notion of Russia, especially in the end of our time, the new Middle Age.
That virtue of Sobernos was parodied, right?
But yeah, I know. So I think that this is why I think Novalis is important. Now, I think this is why my publisher, he had mentioned doing this 2 years ago and wanted me to write an intro, but then he put it on the back burner, and then recently he said, let's do it. And I think,
are you bringing politics into your intro for this one too? Send me it. I'd like to read it, but go ahead. Are you...
but
sorry,
a little bit. Yeah, for me, a little bit of politics, but I don't usually go too far into it. But and this is why,
let's talk about politics.
Precisely when confronted with, over the last 4 years, of the rise of these totalitarians and really demonic figures, the archons, I call them all the time.
Well,
Right?
yes,
That's
absolutely.
what they are. Which, to me, I mean, because Mike, when I wrote Transfiguration, I was anticipating this happening.
Yeah.
In the chapter on Ahriman and Sophia. But I didn't think it was going to happen so quickly. And so, but to me, it's always been this kind of Sophianic or romantic Christianity, which is the antidote to that poisonous parody or simulacra of Christendom that the EU represents. I mean, it couldn't be.
And Pope Francis as well. It's the same kind of thing. Pope Francis is who's just interested in his political interests.
So
I think he's like a Janus-faced creature where it's just me. Like he, out of one side, he's doing the bidding of and this would be our friend Guido's thesis. He's kind of made a concordat with the remains of the British American worldview.
Right.
But on the other hand, he's like then he hits back in different ways. He hits back because he's got a natural instinct for synodality and the bottom up and the divine feminine and Our Lady of Tyre. Yeah.
As we were talking before the show started, I think it's, it makes me uncomfortable both in Laudato Si, even though I was really excited when it first came out, because as I told you, I went through the thing the second time through the footnotes to see if he mentioned me, because it seemed like he was riffing off the submerged reality. A lot of what I argued there, and there was this group studying my work at the Vatican, before COVID, and but even with this one, the motu proprio that came out the other day, looking at that, it almost seems, and I don't want to be too cynical or paranoid, but it almost seems, both think now in retrospect, look almost like the EU version of Christendom.
Yes, exactly. Yes. A bureaucracy, and yes.
Well, that's what I mean, and I think the thing, what disturbs me is, it's like we went through this when I was at a college, right? Before they closed, and the understanding was that the governance of the college was under a shared governance model. Which makes it sound bottom up, right? But I kept telling all the colleagues, I said, no, the administrators and people, president, it's shared governance as long as that serves their purposes. But the second it doesn't, they're going to kick us to the curb, which is exactly what they did. So I think,
when you run a big Jesuit order, what you do is different.
Talking about we're all in this together, right?
Agreed. But again, the kind of schizophrenic. So the follow-up to Laudato Si, which came out right before the synod started, that too, there's so much good in there. But I think he's giving, so when you run a huge Jesuit order, as opposed to voting, right, or everything comes, what you do is you see a huge group of people and you try to meet the different needs there, and that gets very hierarchical. But you can see him through the lens of running the Jesuit order, because I know the abbot of the Abbey of the Genesee has to do the same thing. All these religious leaders, they get it. You have to please different factions. So he's saying powerful things about from the bottom up with the environment, but he's also using UN views of global warming, which kind of take the wind out of our sails. But it's not as incomprehensible to me as it sounds like it is to you. Here's the thing, though. Yeah,
I think these cats see which way the wind's blowing. And just like the World Economic Forum could see which way the wind was blowing, so they enacted all these security measures. Pardon me?
I'm sorry. Do you know the old English song? In good King Charles's golden days, when loyalty no harm meant, and it goes on and on. And if you read those verses, you'll see how the Vicar of Bray just sort of went along with everything to obviously to suit his comfortable life as a parson of an English parish.
Right.
And everything there would be no constant. It's almost yes, it's just absolute oh yeah, pragmatism.
Yeah. Oh yeah, utilitarianism. But here's the question, and I think this brings us exactly to our theme of Christian Romanticism, which is genuinely bottom up.
Oh yeah, I prefer that. I
Actually,
prefer that, but he's again, he's an epical thinker of probably laying the whole thing down. I mean, again, I go back to the prophecy of Saint Malachi. Let's hope Saint Malachi was right, that he's the last pope in this way of doing papacy, or as we enter from the era of Pisces to Aquarius, that like we're shifting from models of top down to bottom up. He's unabashedly in favor of synodality, whether this first synod is going to be hijacked by the neuter German bishops. The original German bishops, if they came from Novalis, would have been. Yeah.
We have synodality in Anglicanism, whether it's the established church or even in the Anglican Catholic Church. We have synods each year. We have diocesan synods. We have the provincial synod.
I think synodality, working like in migrant ministry and so forth, synodality is gonna get its real modern flavoring from the global South. America, we still can't get it, but when I see it coming from the Mexican communities or their experience of Encuentro and so forth, it's the model for the future. It's real. If this first one gets hijacked by German bishops, so be it. I don't think there's anything going back where we have to shift from bottom up models. Lamennais started it, right? Bottom up, but he had to use Ultramontanism. Bottom up, but Ultramontanism. Michael,
sorry,
this is great. Yeah, this is great.
I'm cynical, and I think what I read, read is, how can we preserve our power after it all goes down? But let's go back. Let's move.
Well, we have no power to preserve.
That's what I think. There's no power to preserve. There's no money.
It's a little bit like sort of the way I live personally. I have no pastoral ministry. I have no parish ministry, and I'm rather glad I did, because what I would have to do here in France, well, I would have to have the money to set up a public church, because because my little chapel upstairs wouldn't be compliant to safety regulations. The way it all goes. So it's in France. It's very much all or nothing. In that certain way, I realize that I'm in effect a hermit, but at the same time I'm using this to communicate with you. So I do have some writing articles, writing a few books, discussing things with you. These are things we can do.
Yeah. So, Father, how would you characterize the qualities of Christian Romanticism or Romantic Christianity? Because I don't like definitions, but what were the qualities?
Well, it's human. It's humanity interacting with divinity, with spirit, with consciousness. It's when we are reacting away from the machine, and the machine, which is any kind of thing that reduces humanity to a mechanism that does its job, but is no longer human. So I think there's that. Also, in my own experience, it's a way to get away from that kind of religion, whether it's Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, or any other religion that relies purely on teaching and the word and the book, or the magisterium, for example, or the code of canon law, and the essence of this relationship with God is our yearning for beauty, truth, goodness, to the blue flower, the symbol of the object of that yearning for truth. The truth is not something we possess, but truth is something that we apprehend partially, or only partially. This is one thing I've noticed with these wars recently. There is no truth. There is no. It's the fog of war. We're being told two different absolute truths. So, Aristotle came out with the idea of the law of non-contradiction. Two contraries can't be at the same time true. Well, that's a question of logic. So we have to look elsewhere. We have to look within ourselves. We have to look to our imagination. This imagination which has been expressed in art, in music, in architecture, in man's interaction with nature, like my own trips out on the boat in order to look at those cliffs of the coast, these magnificent monuments of that are being produced by nature. These are parts of our experience, parts of our imagination. We have to learn to be human again.
Yeah.
Christ was perfectly divine and human. There's that hypostatic union.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. The reconciliation of opposites is a phrase that strikes me as key to romantic relationship.
Of Jung. I've always been interested in Jung.
Yeah.
Since my own personal difficulties when I was at university, and trying to understand some of these things, because I was waking up out of what I could call Catholic fundamentalism, of the written word, the magisterium, the machine.
Right, it is. And there's a tendency for collectives to become machines. I mean, it's unavoidable. Right? Unavoidable. So, absolutely. And that's why I often throw things out on social media or in my Substack. Like back in July when I spoke at that gathering in Washington D.C., my big question was, is a phenomenological Christianity possible? Which today I revised to, is an organic Christianity possible?
Well, it won't be possible at the level of society. It will never be a mass phenomenon. This is another thing you'll find about this fellow Rob Riemann, when he contrasts the nobility of spirit with mass humanity, and mass humanity being largely responsible for the way that ordinary decent people could become SS officers who would kill without any more compunction than swatting a fly.
Yeah, exactly.
And that came from making men into machines. Oh, of course, I'm sure you know the film of Charlie Chaplin, The Dictator.
Great dictator.
That wonderful speech of Charlie Chaplin, because he is because Hitler has been arrested and put in a concentration camp, and because he looks like Hitler, he's mistaken for Hitler, the Jewish barber, and he goes up onto the podium and he said, "You are not machines." It's a wonderful speech.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful.
I think, Michael, though, and both of you, like, to get to your question about, is a Christian phenomenology or is a romantic Christianity possible? That's where we began with the French Romantics, nobody really talks about them, but they have to, in order, again, they have to, because we strangled Germany in the like, again, the social ideas of Silvio Gesell, or the that were in Germany, or Rudolf Steiner, the social threefolding. But I think, Michael, in answer to your question, is we do what Romantic Christianity in the hands of even the Inklings, and the hands, it's there, it's implied in Christendom in Europe, but we've got to take seriously questions of politics. So, your point, Father Anthony, on beauty is key, but there can be beauty in politics. There can be beauty in economics, and we need to get serious about thinking about these things. And I know you're aware of that,
something
Michael.
I would never be able to do myself, but if somebody else can sort of pick up the banner, I admire anyone who can introduce such ideas into politics and economics. I couldn't do myself. I would. I suppose I've come to the stage of life where I'm a little bit like in the film The Mission. There's they're about to fight against the Portuguese, and I think it's the
Father Gabriel.
The Father Gabriel. If there is no love in this world, then I've no part in it. He only had death to look forward to. And that's what happened. He was shot whilst carrying the Blessed Sacrament.
And I think what I think really, I mean, this is my answer for everything politically, is
it's too powerful for us. It's the machine is too powerful.
It is too powerful, but that's why the idea is to create the parallel polis, or the parallel church, right?
So
I think that's what Christian Romanticism.
That's why we have to be hermits, writers, farmers, men sailing along the Brittany coast alone, seeming to be completely useless, but being but living in a different way, living a different consciousness. And
you think there's a difference between a parallel polis, and we've had a podcast on that, Michael, but so at that time, if you're thinking of Poland and so forth, you still had kind of an aggressive communist form of socialism there, when we talk about the church, or maybe even again the way I'm looking at the papacy of Pope Francis, is that it's all crumbling down. I think it's crumbling. So we go back to Chesterton, the 5 deaths of the faith, the 6 deaths of the faith. That building the new in the shell of the old is a different intonation than a parallel polis, but I think both are probably necessary. But
well, I think when Václav Havel and his compatriots were creating parallel polis, it wasn't that. I mean, they thought the machine was too big to fight too.
Yeah.
But so what? Start to live the way start to live in the truth. That was the answer, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
This is what we're trying to do. The three of us, and many more people in this world, and the thousands of people living in their homes, doing their jobs, and completely invisible to us, but following maybe without having read the books we've read and the ideas, but some of them I've sometimes found with some of the ordinary working people. Sometimes they come out with gems of ideas, and they don't understand it themselves, but they understand there is a problem with the machine. And well, we can try to live as best we can, and if we can be of influence, if we can have any influence in some way by writing a book, which very few people will read. A few more people will read our blog postings and Facebook postings and this and that. Of course, Facebook, it comes and it goes in a flash. Well, that's post-modernity. It's the attention span of somebody of a lot of people is just a few seconds.
Fortunately. Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. We've been going for almost an hour and a half. I could go
Yeah, great.
Oh, wow.
But Father Anthony, thank you so much for.
Well, I hope I've been.
You have been great. I'm going to link people to your web pages. Tell people, Father Anthony, how they can, say it. We'll put some links out there too, how people can read some of what you've written.
Well, there's they can look up on Google the Blue Flower blog, the Blue Flower,
Okay.
on WordPress, and then they'll find the link and they'll see that. And on YouTube, my channel is called Romantia Christiana. Romantia Christiana. They can go to YouTube and they can just look it up and they'll find it.
Great.
They find a lot of boat stuff, but they'll also find other things like music and sequences of me playing the organ, and because I have a little pipe organ in my house.
Oh, wow.
There it is.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes. And then there's it's my nice what I call the scriptorium. And then it's a fairly sort of simple kind of house but anyway, I've got this room rather nice.
Great. Father Anthony Chadwick, can't thank you enough. I'll link to people, and we thank everybody for listening to the Regeneration podcast. You were going to say something, Father.
Yes. I take it that you're recording this video.
Yep.
And it'll be published where, on YouTube or?
Yeah, I'll send you links to YouTube and podcasts.
That would be wonderful, because you have my email address, and then
Yep.
and then I can link to this. I think there's great hope, because there are, like the Inklings, I don't have the capacities, the intellectual capacities of somebody like C.S. Lewis or Tolkien. They were really very, very great men, and I'm certainly far from it. But in my own way, I'm carrying the banner, and others will do so after we're gone.
Absolutely.
So if Father,
a young priest. Yes, I'll just finish with this. As a young priest who died of leukemia at the age of 36, and I think one of the last things he said to me when I last saw him. We just plant the seeds that others will reap the harvest long after we're gone.
So, Father, I wonder if in parting you could give us a blessing on our listeners.
Benedictio Dei Omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos et manet semper. Amen.
Amen. God bless everybody. We'll see you next week on the Regeneration Podcast.